Welcome to Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Today, if you haven't figured it out from the title of the video, is I'm going to share with you the welder and accessories I recently bought for myself. Learning how to weld is something that I've wanted to do for several years. Basically, about the same time we started this channel. I thought maybe the best way to go would be take classes at a community college and learn all the different styles of welding and then pick one I liked. But as time went on, I never made the time to register for classes at a local community college in my area and get the ball rolling on this. As time went on, guys like Sean started to weld. My buddy Anwar started to weld. My buddy Way started to weld. And so I was kind of feeling left out. This is something that you can teach yourself because of things like YouTube. You can look up really good videos that show you all the tips and techniques that can make you successful welding your own jobs. And so I finally got tired of waiting to pull the plug and get involved with welding. So I just went ahead and went for it. If you're thinking, hey, Timmy's gonna show us how to weld, that's not really what this video is all about. It's basically gonna be a show and tell of all the things I bought so I can start welding and fabricating my own stuff. There's lots of good videos out there on how to weld. I just looked up MIG welding basics or beginner MIG welding, and I found tons of good videos. Some of the videos were from weldingtipsandtricks.com. Other good videos were from weld.com. Another set of videos I watched was from the Eastwood company that makes welders. There's plenty of information out there from guys who professionally weld for a living. So those guys are going to be the better teachers for welding. The main purpose of this video is to inspire you to go ahead and jump in and buy a welder and learn how to weld yourself. I'm going to teach myself just by practicing and watching videos, and this is something you can do too. Don't let welding intimidate you. Since I started modifying my 98 4Runner, there's been several welding jobs that I paid for, and I paid pretty good money for, around $100 an hour. So I got my rock sliders welded on by this guy Wes, who has a shop in Morgan Hill. I had him also weld on the Panhard correction kit that our buddy Einkeith makes. And I also had some additional bars welded on to the front of my CBI bumper. So I've now paid for 3 welding jobs that I could have done myself if I had a welder and I had done some practice and got good enough to feel confident in doing those welding jobs. The goal of buying this welder is kind of twofold. Number one, I'm gonna learn a new skill that can help me out big time with jobs that come up in the future. Number two, because I'm able to do the jobs myself without hiring a welder, it's gonna save me a lot of money. And it's going to save me some time too, because now I don't have to drive my rig over to the welding shop to get the work done. I can do it all in the comfort of my own home. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you like to do your own work, whether it's automotive, whether it's household, a welder can come in very handy. And so just like investing in tools to do automotive work, a welder is going to pay for itself over time, because you're just going to be saving lots of money. Every job you do, it's money saved that you can spend on something else. So now let's show you the welder I got and all the accessories I bought so I can be successful at learning how to weld. I chose to buy a Hobart 210 MVP. There's a few reasons why I chose this. Number one, it could handle 220 power, meaning you can weld thicker material. And another reason is that our buddy Chris owns the same welder and was really happy with it. Number three, the reviews on Amazon were really positive for this welder. So I decided that it was within my price point and it was gonna be able to handle all the work that I plan on using it for. When it comes to MIG welding, you have a couple choices for the wire you use. you have flux core wiring, and you have solid wiring. I'm not going to go into the positives and negatives of each. You choose which one's going to be better for you. I chose to use solid core wiring. If you open up the hatch, here's a big spool of it right here. This happens to be 0.035 wire. When you use solid wire, you're supposed to use a shielding gas so you keep impurities out of the weld. What you need to get is a tank, and this tank happens to be a 75% argon, 25% carbon dioxide. This is the most common gas mix for MIG welding. I bought this tank on Amazon already charged with the 75 argon, 25 CO2. It came just ready to go. This regulator system comes with the Hobart welder. When I got the tank, it was just the tank itself, not the regulator. This comes with the welder. I have this on a cart that I bought also through Amazon. You have choices. You can get ones like at Harbor Freight. I just chose this one because it got really good reviews and the construction of it seemed a little bit more sturdy than the one you can get at Harbor Freight. As you can see, it holds everything pretty nicely. The welder on top, middle tray to hold extra stuff, and then you have a tray on the bottom for extra storage. So for the welder, you got your cable and your gun. You can see the wire sticking through right there. And then you have your ground cable. And then on the other side, you have your power connection. Now, when it comes to power, I think most houses aren't going to have a plug in the garage to plug in a welder. What you have to do is you have to use an adapter. Here's the adapter I bought. I have a dryer in my garage, and the dryer connection is this style of plug, and then this converts it to the plug for the welder. So basically you just unplug your dryer, you plug this in, and then you plug in the welder to this. As you can see, this is a pretty short cable, so what I did is I bought an extra long cable to where maybe if I wanted to weld in the driveway, I can weld in the driveway. I just get more reach. For welding, you want proper safety gear. Number one, you want a welding helmet that protects your eyes so you don't burn your corneas and go blind. This style of helmet goes on automatically, so it's not always tinted. As soon as you start welding, it darkens down and then it re-lightens after you finish the weld. So it's an auto darkening helmet. And I got the Stars and Stripes because I'm patriotic. America. It's nice to have a leather jacket to protect you from the welding splatter, because if you don't protect your skin, you're going to be hating life when a little bit of splatter gets on your skin and burns the crap out of you. So highly recommend getting a nice jacket. This one happens to be made by Lincoln Electric. It's a nice heavy duty leather jacket. It has a high collar so none of the welding slag can get into your neck area and burn you. And then it's got cuffs that you can tighten up too. And finally, you're going to want some good gloves. You protect your hands from the heat and the splatter. These three things are pretty imperative when you're welding: helmet, gloves, and a jacket. So now we'll do a show and tell of all the little accessories I bought with my welder. Number one is I bought a spool of 024 wire. So this would be for welding much thinner material like sheet metal applications. So I went ahead and bought a big old spool. Will I ever go through all of this? I don't know, but I got a spool of 024 wire and I got a spool of 035 wire. I bought these two on the suggestion of our buddy Chris, because he said with 024 wire you can handle the thinner material, and then the 035 wire will be able to handle the medium gauge metal up to thicker metal. A lot of people think 030 wire is the most universal, and maybe I'll even get myself a spool of that. But for right now, I have 024 and 035 wire. With the welder comes a metal gauge so you can determine the thickness of the metal you're working on, and then you'll be able to go to your welder and look at what settings you should set it to get a good weld. Metal prep for welding is very important to get a quality weld. And so I bought some products to make myself successful. Number one is you have these abrasive pads. These are kind of like a stripping pad. They're not really meant to sand metal, but they're meant to be able to clean off the mill scale and maybe some rust off of the metal before you weld. If you wanted to actually sand metal down, then you would have different sanding discs. And I have ones of different grits. I have 40, 60, 80, and 120 grit discs. These are what you call a flap disc. In order to make it easier to clean up the metal after you weld, an anti-splatter spray is good to spray on before you weld. This way the splatter doesn't stick to the metal and you could easily wipe it off. So that's what this spray is for. This is for keeping your tip clean. You could use the same product to spray on the tip of your welder, but what you do is after you get done welding, you put the hot tip in this product. It's called Cooter Snot, and it keeps your tip clean from the splatter, so you don't have to clean the tip as much on your welding gun. After you've maybe sanded your material and maybe cleaned off the surface with one of these abrasive pads, you would want to clean it up with something. I don't have acetone just yet. I'm going to get myself some, but you could clean it up with some denatured alcohol, but I've read that acetone is a better cleaner to prep the metal for welding. So that covers all the metal prep stuff that I bought for welding. I also bought some magnetic tools to help hold pieces together so I can get in there, put a couple tack welds in, remove the tools, and then I can get in there and finish the weld. They're all magnetic tools. These are different size ones where you can basically articulate these little arms and get a piece of metal into position. I'll show you an example. You got two pieces of metal and say you want to weld them in a 90-degree angle. So you put it on here and it basically will hold the material steady for you while you get a couple tack welds in there, and then you'd want to remove the magnet and then finish the weld because the heat of the welding will destroy these magnets. So this is just one example of how you can use these magnets to help you get pieces together. So these small ones would be for smaller pieces of metal, lighter weight. I got some ones that are a little bit beefier, more powerful magnets. This one right here would be like an application. Say you wanted to weld like a little tab on a piece of pipe. You would put this onto the piece of pipe, and then this is spring loaded, and you would be able to put this down onto the piece you want to weld, and it would hold pressure on the tab, and then you could get in there, tack it, and then you could remove this and then complete the weld. These right here are magnets of different sizes to where, again, you can put a couple pieces of metal together, hold them in place while you could get some tack welds in, and then remove them and complete the weld. I also bought myself some different style clamps. I got a couple like this. I got a couple like this that are made more for like sheet metal applications. And they're basically good to be able to clamp something on. Say you were welding something onto your frame. You would adjust it, you would clamp it down tight on the material, you would tack weld the material to where now it's secure, and then you can remove your clamp and then you can finish your welding. This is a set of welding pliers, so you use this to where you can cut the solid wire or flux core wire to the right length. So you basically use it like this. You would put the face of this against the tip, and then you just snip it off. And that gets you the proper length of wire coming out from your tip. It also has these little serrated edges in here, so if your tip got dirty, you can unscrew this, you could go in here and clean out the inside of the tip. So these are pretty much a must to have. You need a good set of welding pliers. Here's a little right angle tool you can use to hold material together. Maybe I'll use it, maybe I won't, but I've got one. Finally, I have a slag hammer, so after you weld, you can hit the weld and knock off the slag. And so I got this. And I think that's everything that I bought. It's a lot of stuff, right? But just like turning wrenches on vehicles, the right tool is going to make your life easier. So I decided to buy a lot of different things that I think are going to help me be more successful at welding. And now, because I know human nature, and I know if I don't show myself welding at the end of this video, people are going to go, I can't believe you got a welder and then you didn't show us a weld. How can you do that? So yeah, I'm going to now show you my very beginner novice ability on welding. And don't give me too much crap because I'm just beginning. All right, let's go. The metal I'm going to weld is some 3/16 plate metal. I prepped the metal with one of the buffing pads that I told you about. Having an angle grinder is going to be really good for you to have if you're going to get into welding. You can put a cutting disc, you can put a grinding disc, and you can put a stripping disc like this one. So I cleaned off the mill scale off the plate metal with this disc. A cordless one like this DeWalt one's nice to have, so you don't have to run a cord out to where you're working. It's cordless, so it's just more versatile. So you can see that I was able to clean off the mill scale really nicely. Another thing I did buy is a Harbor Freight welding table. It's pretty darn affordable. It articulates. You could tilt it in different directions, and it stores in a way that doesn't take up a lot of space. You can loosen a couple handles on either side, and then you can tilt the whole thing, and then you could collapse the legs, and then you can see how it doesn't take up a lot of space. You can put this up against the wall or something in your garage. So it's a pretty narrow profile. I'm utilizing a couple of my magnet tools to hold the material together, and I'm holding them together to basically have an open corner. So most welding machines are going to have some type of chart for you to consult to figure out the settings you need to do on your welder to get a good weld. So going over to the chart, I'm using a 75% argon, 25% carbon dioxide mix. So I go here, and then you choose the input voltage. I'm going to be welding at 230 volts. And then you look at the size of the wire you're using. I'm using 035 wire, so I'm going to be in this bottom row. And then I look for the size material I'm welding. I'm going to be welding 3/16 inch material. And then it gives me two values. The first value is the voltage setting, and the second value is the wire speed. When it comes to the voltage setting, this is just an arbitrary number. It's not telling you the actual voltage, but it's just telling you which click setting to set your Hobart welder to. So I'm going to be setting it to the 6 setting, and then I'm going to be setting the wire speed to 40. Voltage is here. I'm going to click it to 6, and then I'm going to set my wire speed to 40. On this Hobart welder, you turn on the machine right here. I'm going to turn my gas on, and then this is the regulator. What I've read is that a setting of 20 is about right for doing MIG welding. So you pull the trigger and you want to see the needle go down to 20. And that's about right. And you can see that the wire is feeding out. This is where your welding pliers come into play. I'm gonna now clip off the excess. So I just put my cutters right up against the tip and snip it off. And now you see I have the right length. You want to ground your material, so I'm going to ground it right here. I've got my gloves on, I've got my helmet on, and I'm going to put a couple tack welds in. Now that I have a couple tack welds in, I'm going to remove the magnets. Okay, here goes nothing. So here's my welding job. I did okay, I guess. I started off pretty good, but then I got a little bit off onto this plate, a little more than this one. The weld dropped down, and it's a little bit big, so I think my speed was a little bit too slow. But all in all, I think this would hold pretty well. So there it is. Timmy did a weld. All right, we're all done with this show and tell session of me showing off the welder and equipment I bought to get into the welding world. The main purpose of this video is to try to inspire you to take up the challenge of welding. Just like auto mechanics, it's something that you can learn, and if you practice, you'll get really good at it. With that said, I don't think you should go buy a welder and then immediately start welding stuff on your frame for structural stuff, because you're going to want to practice and get your skill level pretty high before you start welding critical things. If you're just playing around building something that's not really a safety feature or structural feature, then you can just go for it. And I did just that. I recently built a bracket that I'm going to show off in a future video coming up. It's an idea I had to hold a sun shower up on my roof rack, so when I'm camping I can hang a sun shower up high instead of having to find a tree. So you'll see that video coming up very soon. All the things I bought to start welding I got through Amazon. Amazon, as you know, is a pretty great place to do some shopping and get good prices from. So I bought everything from Amazon with the exception of the welding table. I got that at Harbor Freight. So we'll put links in the video description of all the stuff I bought. So if you saw something that you thought would be good for you, you can go ahead and purchase it from that link that we provide. With all that said, thank you for watching Toyota Time with Timmy the Toolman and Sean. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, do that below. Take care. Bye-bye. Sick mods and sick welding. Happy fabricating, people. Peace out and bye-bye.